Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today I'd like to talk about Japanese literature and loneliness because I've read a few Japanese authors recently and it seems to be a common theme. So I was intrigued. I thought, okay, these people are very lonely. Let's see, are they actually lonely? Their books say they are. Let's have a look. And indeed, Japan is the third loneliest country in the world. Another thing I noticed with these books is that these authors capture loneliness in a way I've never seen in Western literature. I've never seen before written in this way whatsoever in other books that are not from Japan. I'd like to talk about two books today. The first one is Kitchen by Banana Yoshimoto. The second one is Tokyo Ueno Station by Yu Miri. This is actually a book of two stories. So the first one is Kitchen and the second one is Moonlight Shadow. Both of these stories deal with grief. So in the first story, Makaja, the main character, her grandmother dies. And in the second story, Moonlight Shadow, Satsuki's boyfriend dies. Both of these characters also have really close friends who are also dealing with grief. Even though both of these characters are dealing with grief, there is still a massive feeling of isolation and loneliness that, well, four of the characters in particular are going through. But also with these stories, in the end, the loneliness is sort of resolved and there is a happy ending and we can see light. There is good things to come for these characters, basically. So the next story, Tokyo Ueno Station, this is by Yu Miri. This follows the story of Kazu, who is actually a ghost. It's kind of interesting perspective. So already we're dealing with grief because there is death involved. The style of this book, again, is very, very lonesome. And there are so many solitary lines. For example, in the second page, we have a few sentences that are just on their own, in their own sort of paragraph. So we have a sense of tiredness, I was always tired, there was never a time I was not tired, etc. There's loads of instances when we have solitary lines throughout the book. That just really reflects the loneliness, again, of the main character. The thing I like with the solitary lines as well is it really draws in emphasis on what this character is feeling. So in themselves, these lines are isolated from everything else. I also really like the use of metaphor in this book. So the main character, Kazu, has been conditioned to associate rain with grief because when... I'm not going to spoil it for you, but just know that rain is associated with death for the main character. So the difference between this and Kitchen is that there is no really happy ending in this. It's pretty damn miserable. I have to wonder, how can these authors write so brilliantly about loneliness? And I think it's because they've experienced it so much themselves, perhaps, that they are writing through lived experience, and it's so good. And also, can we just say that the translators have done an excellent job, a really excellent job. I don't know who translated the Yoshimoto, but Morgan Giles translated this, and I think they did an exceptional job in still getting what the author was trying to portray into the English language. Why do people enjoy reading about loneliness? So for my master's thesis, I am studying emotional regulation, and this is where people who, they might not like an emotion, they want to change it, so they regulate it and they use techniques to try and divert away, or they might discharge an emotion, for example, say by listening to angry music. They can feel anger and release it through the music, if that makes sense. So I think people read books about loneliness because it's a form of solace, because they can relate to the characters. By reading about other characters' loneliness, perhaps some of the readers feel like they don't feel as lonely anymore, or maybe they still feel a bit lonely, but there are other characters who are like them, so they can empathise as well. In other words, I think readers don't feel alone with their loneliness. Again, I mentioned the authors earlier on, but I think it's also cathartic for authors who are feeling lonely to write about loneliness. So it's a sense of relief, I think, for both the authors and the readers who are experiencing isolation. But I'm not an expert. I don't know any Japanese people, I've never been to Japan, I don't know about these authors' lives. This is just my perspective on why I think people love reading about loneliness, why people like writing about loneliness in Japan. So thank you for watching, let me know what you think down below. Am I just talking rubbish? I'm not going to say the rude word. What do you think about loneliness? Do you like reading about loneliness? Are you lonely? If you're lonely, then comment down below and we can talk and hopefully you feel less lonely. Thank you for watching and see you next time. Goodbye!